Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. Oh, I am very nervous today, extremely nervous and kind of shutting down. I'll just be prepping for tomorrow and then my eyes will just go shut. I just completely shut down. And I think it's because I'm nervous because I have the hearing tomorrow. In fact, those of you who are watching this, I'm in court right now. I'm on the stand right now, um, talking to a judge. It's so crazy to think about that, to think about the fact that I'm going to court tomorrow. I'm just very nervous. I don't know how it's gonna go. I've never done this before. I went a month ago and my ex asked for a continuance, so there was just nothing to it. But yeah, I have no idea how it's gonna go, what it's gonna look like. So I'm just trying to stay calm and just honestly, tell the truth. Just tell the truth. And, I'm not out here trying to ruin anyone's life. I'm trying to protect my own and my kids. And I think if I just stay clear about that and I don't call the judge your highness, because I feel like I'm just gonna fuck up and get nervous. Uh, your majesty, I mean, your honor, I think I'm gonna be fine. So yeah, so that's what's going on. I'm just prepping for my court case tomorrow. And if any of you guys have had to do that, what was your experience like? Let me know in the comments below. Should I do a get ready with me tomorrow morning? Get ready with me as I go downtown for my DVRO. I think I should. And also, should I wear the cat shirt? I think I should. I think I should. That's just where I'm at right now. I think I'm also going to bring my possum, my support possum, and just be like, Your Honor, I am clearly the stable one in this relationship. Not relationship, but oh, there's a goji berry in there. There's a goji berry. For those of you listening, I'm holding a stuffed possum, not like a taxidermy one, though I should get one of those. This is ew, that's disgusting. I'm holding like a stuffed animal. It's a puppet. I bought a puppet possum for my children. Why did I do that? I don't know. It's disgusting looking. It's got like a big rat tail, as possums do. And there's just an old goji berry, and I'm kind of hungry, so I'm gonna eat it. Just kidding. Also, I have Dr. Ramani on today's episode, and I'm very excited about that. She is a psychologist, a best-selling author, and truly the world's leading expert in narcissistic abuse. She is a brilliant woman and has shed so much light on what it's like being in a relationship with a narcissist, the different types of narcissism. There's vulnerable narcissism, grandiose narcissism, malignant narcissism, talking about how it's a spectrum. We all have some narcissistic traits, and how to heal, most importantly, from narcissistic abuse. That's, I think, my favorite part of this episode. So, yeah, I think you will absolutely love her. I actually discovered Dr. Ramani years ago when I was really confused around my relationship. And I remember just looking online and she popped up and I started binging her YouTube. Follow her on YouTube if you haven't, Dr. Ramani. And dude, I'm just playing with this disgusting old goji berry. Also, you guys, this Friday, 12 p.m. PST is our first book club discussion. We're going to go live. I'm going to get to see all of your faces and we're going to discuss Tiffany Jenkins' new book, A Clean Mess. Such a page fucking turner. It's so good. It was so, so good. I just finished it last night. And yeah, so come join us for the discussion. Even if you haven't read the book, just come join. We talk, her book taps into all different subjects: addiction, motherhood, divorce, um, being a content creator, sobriety, she's just such a brilliant storyteller. And of course, I identify with her on many, many levels. So I'm so excited this Friday, 12 p.m. PST on my Patreon, patreon.com/Laura Clary. We pick a new book every single month to discuss and chat about and connect on. Next month's book is by Tara Swart. She's a neuroscientist. She's absolutely brilliant. I had her on my podcast a few years ago, and she is honestly so brilliant. She has a new book called The Signs, and y'all are freaking out over it. So that's going to be the August book. So make sure to join my book club by joining my Patreon, patreon.com/Laura Clary. I also go live every week and cry. If you want to watch me cry, patreon.com/Laura Clary. I literally just cry on my phone in my car on Patreon exclusively. I only exclusively cry on Patreon. I don't cry anywhere else. If I think I'm going to cry, I sign on to Patreon. I go live. That's like a top tier. Literal tier. Top tier for tears, for my tears. You got to pay top tier for my tears. Should I, and I'm going to live stream the hearing tomorrow on my Patreon. Dude, can you imagine? Just like a fucking influencer court case is so ridiculous. The fact that it's all so fucking public, which by the way was not my fucking choice, okay? But it's out there. So I might as well live stream it. What do you think the judge would do? Like, Your Honor, can you get me another light? I'm just shadowy. All right. Enjoy the episode. I know that you will. And have an amazing day. And I will too. Okay. Thanks to Cash App for sponsoring this episode. Cash App can do way more than you think to make your money work for you. If you direct deposit at least $300 in paychecks each month and use the Cash App card for purchases, you can earn up to 4% annual interest on your savings. No hidden fees, no minimum balance requirements. Also, you can hit your savings goals even faster by turning on the Roundups feature on your Cash App card. With Roundups, every purchase you make using the card is rounded up to the nearest dollar, and that spare change is automatically put into your savings. Don't let your money sit around and gather dust. Make it work for you. Take advantage of high interest savings on Cash App today. And for a limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash for real. Just download the Cash App, use our exclusive referral code LauraC in your profile, send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Direct deposits, roundups, overdraft coverage, and discounts provided by Cash App, a Block Incorporated brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I discovered you years ago when I was in a relationship that was so confusing to me. I just remember feeling so confused, and I knew it was dysfunctional. Dare I say abusive, but he wasn't hitting me. So I'm like, no, it wasn't abusive, but
we know that's not a thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just was so fucking confused, pardon my French. And then I was looking things up around what was happening. And then I see this thing called the trauma bond. And I start reading about that. And I'm like, oh, that feels very familiar. Then I type in trauma bond. And then, of course, you show up.
It it's a shame that that's a narcissist. I show up, trauma bond, I show up, broken heart, I show up. But
But you are arguably like the number one leading expert in narcissistic abuse.
Thank you.
Wow. Like you know more about it than anyone. What led you to focus on this specific form of abuse?
I mean, I wish it was a sassier, more dramatic story. Like, well, it wasn't. I was an academic for years, for over 20 years. I was a university professor. We have to do research. I started researching narcissism. That's where I started, and specific to health and healthcare and all of that. And then I also had a private practice. And interestingly, in the private practice, I was seeing people who were in relationships where what they were encountering by their description was clearly like narcissistic patterns in the relationship, the low empathy, the manipulation, the quick anger, the gaslighting, the victimhood, all of it, every time. I was like, all these people. And I would think to myself, boy, wouldn't it help them to just know about narcissism? Maybe that would take care of it. It's usually not how we do therapy. But I remember with one client in particular, I'm thinking, if this woman knew what narcissism was, she'd because I think for a lot of people, you think, I think I'm just my own weird, crazy world. I'm like, no, it's like people with depression. If you're depressed and you're going through that, you actually think you're the only person in the world who's looking into this pit of despair. When we give it a name, it's still very difficult, but it has a name. Yeah. And so you start to realize you're not having this one unique, strange, you're weird and disturbed experience. I really believed that if we could teach people that there is a pattern to this behavior. It wasn't like this. Clients were saying, one time my partner screamed at me, one time they wouldn't empty the dishwasher. That wasn't this. By the time they came into my office, most of them going through this for 10 years plus. So this was a pattern. And nowadays with the whole electronics of it all, we have phones and emails. I can see the conversation. It's not that I ever thought they were lying, but they would put it in my face. They'd play recordings. It was unmistakable.
Wow.
And so what I found was that not only was this a phenomenon completely not studied by the world of mental health, there was a lot of resistance to talking about it this way. Just this morning, I was watching, someone who has no professional credentials whatsoever, but there's a
TikTok?
real push. Yeah, TikTok, which is really people with no professional credentials whatsoever.
Yeah.
Is pushing back on this idea of narcissism. And there's a lot of still blame rhetoric. If unqualified strangers want to say what they say, they can do what they want. But what was concerning me was that there was even pushback in the world of mental health about using this framework. Well, if someone's having a problem in a relationship, we should teach them how to communicate. I'm like, there's no way for them to communicate. They've been trying to communicate. Wow. They communicate directly. They communicate in writing. They communicate empathically. They communicate with gratitude. They communicate slowly. They wait till they're regulated. A person cannot make asking someone to pick the kids up from soccer a 12-hour strategic play that looks like you're planning a battle. That's crazy. And that's what got me into this work. And it was just really that people were going through this, that they benefited from validation and safety and empathy and compassion and then awareness, and that the world of mental health, I don't think still turns their back on these folks. We're changing that. But I think until very recently, most therapists did not have the vocabulary for how to work with these clients. That's how I got into it.
Wow. That's super interesting. And I guess most narcissists, not all, don't think they're narcissists or don't go in to get diagnosed. So that's tricky too, right?
So the challenge is that one myth we can even bust today. Yeah. We don't even have to use the word diagnose and narcissism in the same sentence. And there's a reason for that.
Okay.
When we talk about diagnosis, the implication is we're talking about an illness or an illness process. Like a person's diagnosed with depression, a person's diagnosed with anemia, a person's diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
At this point in history, even depression's tricky, but we have checklists and tests and scales. Depression has a very strong biological component. We're able to tell very definitively. And depression clearly is a illness process. Nobody wants to be depressed, and we want to get people out of that because it really can take a toll on their health.
Yeah.
The diagnosis is for illness. Narcissism, I don't think we should talk about it diagnostically because diagnosis implies treatment. And there has been never one randomized clinical trial showing large scale success. I mean, are there unicorns out there? Sure, every so often. But by and large, narcissistic people have a personality style, right? So what gets narcissistic people into therapy is not their narcissism. And kind of it is. But what's happening if something goes wrong for the narcissistic person, their partner is increasingly unsatisfied with their relationship, their business goes belly up, there's some form of public shame, or even in some cases, they have an ego injury and they cannot cope with it. They feel a sense of not even as much sadness as they feel like an emptiness and an entitlement to it going better. So they get really almost victimhoody and like, I had the right that this go right, kind of thing. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry it didn't work out. But the reason they're upset, they're not expressing sadness. They're expressing, again, this emptiness and that their entitlement didn't come through. So my point in saying that is things can get narcissistic people into therapy. And the more we see the narcissistic vulnerability, that victimhood, the shame, the anxiety, the brooding anger, the world is out to get me, nobody understands me, life is unfair to me, that whole shtick, that is what actually, that's more likely to end up in a therapist's office. The challenge is this. The narcissistic person may go into therapy for those things. There's also patterns that co-occur with narcissism a lot. Addiction, in some cases, irritable depression, sometimes social anxiety. There's other things that can happen. So that other thing, like the person who's living with addiction goes to a treatment center. Makes sense.
Yeah, like for me, I'm 14 years sober. When pre-sobriety, I definitely had narcissistic traits. I was selfish and self-seeking to the extreme. I was driven by fear. I was, lying to get what I wanted. I would steal because I was broken. Well, I'm too good to work there. It was just horrible. I was a kid, but when I went through treatment, went through a 12-step program, I learned to shift my focus from what can I get today to what can I give. I created new habits and pathways to where I'm a good person. I keep my side of the street clean. I'm not perfect by any means, but I wouldn't say... So explain that.
Okay, so addiction's a great model because you said you went through 12 steps. So 12-step actually gives us an interesting look into this. Now, for example, narcissism and addiction are relatively high levels of overlap. So what this means is this. When an addict is actively using, it's almost impossible to separate out narcissism from addiction. I'll often tell families, because usually the addict doesn't care, but the people around them do. I'll say, we're not going to know until they get sober. And in fact, I have worked with families who didn't know about the narcissism piece, but the family was being destroyed by the addict's behavior, right? The person who's living with addiction may go to a treatment center, may go to sober living, commit to 12-step, right? Then that's where we really see what emerges. Because for many people living with addiction who go through all of that, especially 6 months out, even 12 months out, there is a humility. There is, again, the tenets of 12-step, which are humility in the face of this, the giving instead of taking, the chronic awareness, the lifelong commitment to sobriety every day. And it is a lifelong struggle. I've worked with enough people living with addiction who are 30, 35 years sober and say, every day you think about it. Every day you think about it. It doesn't go away, right? It's something bigger than you. That humility in the face of it, we would not see as much in a narcissistic person. In fact, narcissistic people are very performative about their sobriety. They're better at sober than everyone else. They're better at 12-step. They're very, again, performative and remain attention seeking. I'm sure you've met people like that in the addiction, in the sobriety world, frankly. So personality doesn't go away. Addiction can be treated. It's an illness and it can be treated. But once you lift the illness, the personality remains. So there are people out there who may have had personality styles that were a bit more flexible, healthier, pro-social, that once addiction was gone, there would actually, when they're getting to the steps around making amends and all of that, that amends making was done with tremendous humility and frankly grief because they lost people. And there was a real self-awareness that I did this. Whereas the narcissistic person making amends feels entitled to people coming back around. Like, okay, I did this step. I did my apology. Like, what do you mean? Like, I did the step, and then there'll be a tantrum. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not how that works,
not
right?
how it works, yeah.
So that's what I mean by even addiction treatment folks
Yeah.
don't often account enough for narcissism. And in fact, some even push back saying, no, you're pathologizing the addict. I'm like, I'm not pathologizing anyone. I'm saying you have a personality pattern here that increases the likelihood of relapse because
Wow.
narcissistic people really struggle with emotional regulation,
Oh,
especially because they're fragile, especially when their egos get dinged, when things don't go the way they want, they get a broken heart, all the things that bother us. But that dysregulation means the narcissistic person who may be in sobriety may relapse because substances, alcohol are the best way to, an easy way, an external way to regulate instead of owning it internally. So the reason I think that addiction treatment professionals need to know this is because it's a risk factor. And I have
Wow.
worked with a lot of clients with narcissism and co-occurring addiction. They were the clients who would relapse
They're
more.
the chronic relapsers.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How is a narcissist made?
So narcissism is a developmental phenomenon. And in many, many cases, what we see is no matter what, the narcissistic adult had some form of adversity in childhood, right? So narcissism is in its fashion, if not a full-on trauma response, it's a response to attachment breaches, to adversity, chaos, inconsistency. We also can see that you might see parental over-involvement or over-indulgence. So what I mean by that is it's not just the kid getting all the experiences and toys and theme park trips and stuff in the car on their 16th birthday and all that. It's not just that. It's also the sense that the child is identified as chosen, more special than any other kid. They deserve the
Kanye.
rules broken for them. That's
Yeah.
what they deserve. Like you're the golden child. And even with all of that, Laura, all the things I'm telling you, the vast majority of people who grow up under conditions of adversity, who grow up under conditions of abuse and trauma and neglect and attachment breaches and inconsistency and even overindulgence don't go on to become narcissistic. It's still not the go-to path. But if we look at any narcissistic person and we go back into their history, almost invariably, we're going to see some of this. And the most grandiose narcissistic people will often be so protective of their early environment because they don't want to be associated with anything that's at all, quote unquote, bad. They'll say, my father was a great man. My mother was the best. My family was the best. And before you know it, you realize these parents had, they had basically told the kid, you're everything, you're wonderful. But here's the problem. If anyone out there listening wants to spoil their kid, let me give you some advice. If you're going to overindulge your kid, tell your kid they're special, all of that, you better be emotionally attuned to them. Meaning that you have to allow that child to have the full range of emotion, teach them to regulate their emotion, foster empathy. So my point is, you want to be spoily, then have all that other stuff. That might be an offset.
Sure.
But those same parents that are ultra overindulgent, who sort of foster a sense of entitlement in the child, these are often homes where I say there's a lot of junk food, but there's no healthy food.
Wow.
There's a lot of fun, but there's none of the heavy stuff that really what childhood needs to be about, which is learning emotional regulation, learning empathy, learning how to be with other people, learning how to tolerate resilience, like you said, learning how to tolerate when things don't go your way. Kids who are raised like that don't tend to get that piece of it. Like I said, most of them don't become narcissistic. Some do. Most people who are raised in that overindulgent, you're so special kind of way, they go on to feel like imposters because they were told, you're all that. Everyone should have a parade for you every day. You should always get to play in the soccer game. You don't have to be with that teacher. I'm going to fight for you to get the A or the part in the play. Then they go into adulthood and mommy cannot call up the college professor or their boss, or dad can't do that. I mean, in some cases they can if dad owns the company or dad is in that industry. But by and large, now the kid's like, okay, and then they feel like a loser. And then that can really lead to a really uncomfortable sense of I don't belong, or having to work harder to feel like they've earned something, which is that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It can be quite common in kids, not only from adversity and trauma, but also these, and some narcissistic people feel imposter syndrome. So
Yeah.
the thing is, the narcissistic people, when they feel like an imposter, they overcompensate with these grandiose defenses. I'm better than you. I'm better than anyone else. Trash talking people, all of that.
Oh,
so it
yeah.
shows up differently.
Yeah, I know people like that.
But that's where it comes
everybody
from.
does. Right.
It's developmental. It's development. There's a temperamental piece. Everyone has a biological part of their personality. You're a mom, you know that.
Yeah.
Your kids are different when they're born. They have baby personalities. Certain personalities can be shaped by the environment to increase the probability of narcissism. But since I may have used the word clinically, observable, noticeable narcissism, probably only about 11, 12% of the population. So 88% of people are not at all narcissistic at a level we could see it. And so, like I said, even of those kids who go through that, only a certain percentage of them will.
So this is interesting. So, okay, if it's built in your childhood from your
early environment.
Okay. So for parents who are like, maybe I'm doing some of these things to my 5-year-old, or I'm, not giving them enough consequences, or I'm not there for them consistently. What can they do? Is there an age in which it's like, well, their personality's developed, like they're a narcissist now, or is there hope? What can parents do?
The best thing I can tell you about personalities, think about Jell-O. Okay. So when you first make Jell-O, it's liquid.
Okay.
And as it sits in the freezer, it gets more solid. And there's a point at which you could even make a Jell-O mold, and you could put it upside down and the Jell-O will hold the shape.
Yeah.
That's personality. The younger the child,
Yeah.
all the, dendritic connections in the brain are, so they're eminently shapeable. That's why protecting children from trauma is such a huge, huge issue. The more you protect children and leave them feeling safe, the more you're actually protecting them for a lifetime, because it has implications on nervous system regulation and development. Okay. So as time goes on, that Jell-O gets more and more solid, and it's a little harder to shape it, but not impossible.
Yeah.
The human personality, and this isn't an exact number, but it's a range, is largely shaped when adulthood begins, which is around 25. So adolescence really goes to 25. We have this whole idea that 22-year-olds are adults. They're not. Not according to the frontal lobes, not according to how the brain is developing. And personality continues to, that's why we see kind of the overly dramatic hijinks of people in their early 20s. They're still teenagers.
Wow.
They're still adolescents. And that's why they make the bad decisions. And we're thinking they're adults, right? Addiction, to your point, the vast majority of addiction starts in people between the ages of 15 and 25. It's a young person's illness.
Totally.
And then it sets up a vulnerability in the brain for the rest of that person's life. That's why protecting people from trauma is so important, because it is a risk factor for the onset of substance use and addiction.
Wow.
It's a long train, right? So the earlier the child is in an environment where they feel safe, seen, protected, they're learning empathy, but they're also learning limits, bedtimes and routines. And even if it's bring your plate to the sink, it is learning to say thank you. It's learning to share. I always say to people, do things like play a board game and let the kid lose. Like, I remember I'd play Chutes and Ladders and I with my kids, and I would win. And someone's like, get over yourself, Ramani. I'm like, no, she needs to understand.
I will kick
And
that
she'd
kid's
get mad.
ass.
She'd get mad. One time she pushed the board off the table. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I won. And I'm happy and I'm enjoying that. And there's going to be times you win. And you've that
How
felt
old
hard
was the
for me.
kid when this
She was
happened?
about she was like 4.5.
Yeah. 3, 4 is
Yeah.
when they are very, I win.
Yeah.
And it can be so easy to go, okay, you win, let him win, let him win.
No, she had to learn. And I say, I'm having an experience too. And I get it. It doesn't feel
going
good,
through that now,
right?
Poppy, yeah.
And then, of course, you play Chutes and Ladders enough, you're going to lose. And I lost. And then, so we tried again. And I did lose 2 games down because there's no skill, right? It's just the way the thing goes.
Yeah.
And I said, ooh, and you could see the concern on her face. I say, I'm okay. I'm happy for you, but it's a little hard to lose. And so these were the moments where, again, this is why even having kids do play sports or games where they lose. One
Yeah.
thing I loved about my children's elementary school is even the least athletic children were made to do sport because even if they're just at their level, because that idea of after you lose, it was being, the sports personship, congratulating the other team. You don't get mad. You don't sulk. It's a hearty handshake.
Yeah.
I'll always appreciate that sense of, you show grace in these losses, you learn to regulate. Well, a kid not only has to be taught that, but they have to see it. So if they see their parent throwing their phone on the ground or screaming or punching a hole in the wall, that's also confusing for the child. And it's also unsettling. We're back to the safety. So you want to do this right, that's how you do it right. And you also, you let your kid be disappointed. And when they're disappointed and they cry, you let them cry and you let them talk it out and you identify feelings with that emotion rather than boys don't cry, don't be ridiculous. This isn't that big a deal. It's a big deal to them. So your job as a parent is sometimes to sit with the discomfort of your unhappy child. This is not easy to do. I made more mistakes doing this. I wish I got a do-over. We don't get a do-over on parenting. But when I look back, the days when I was stressed and tired, I was like, oh my gosh, get over yourself. And that was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you just pacify because
you pacify. You want to keep the trains running on time.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Wow. Thank you so much to Cash App for sponsoring this episode. What was your first job and how big was your paycheck? Let me know in the comments. Could you have used getting that money a little earlier than payday? If you direct deposit on Cash App, you can get your money up to 2 days earlier than some banks. That is nice, really nice. Cash App can do way more than you think to make your money work for you. If you direct deposit at least $300 in paychecks each month and use the Cash App card for purchases, you can earn up to 4% annual interest on your savings. No hidden fees, no minimum balance requirements. Also, you can hit your savings goals even faster by turning on the Roundups feature on your Cash App card. With Roundups, every purchase you make using the card is rounded up to the nearest dollar, and that spare change is automatically put into your savings. Don't let your money sit around and gather dust. Make it work for you. Take advantage of high interest savings on Cash App today. And for a limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn additional cash for real. Just download the Cash App, use your exclusive referral code Laura C, Laurac, in your profile and send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank. Member FDIC. Direct deposits, roundups, overdraft coverage, and discounts provided by Cash App, a Block Incorporated brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. So then what do we do if a parent is narcissistic? How do you protect the child from that?
So the impact of a narcissistic parent or a parent with narcissistic behaviors will be felt throughout the lifespan. And I don't think we can soft pedal that, because parenting is about safety, protection, and empathy. That's it. That's all you got to do. And you've done it right. And that seems to be too hard for a lot of people, right? Because it means that the parent puts the child's needs with primacy. They are the needs, right? Doesn't mean that the child gets interrupted all the time, but the child being kept safe, the parent makes a sacrifice or compromise to keep the child safe. The narcissistic parent gets their needs met through the child. They have poor boundaries with the child. They are entitled with the child. You owe me. The child slowly learns that to be safe with the narcissistic parent means they have to silence who they are. And it's not that intellectual process. The child is always trying to figure out how to attach to a parent. A safe parent is easy to attach to. You can read their face. You can read their emotions. The child naturally gravitates. The child feels compelled to attach to a parent regardless of the parent's personality. The narcissistic parent can run hot and cold, high and low. And because for children, attachment is a survival need, they will blame themselves at the times it doesn't go smoothly, that the parent is disinterested. So how does a narcissistic parent affect a child? In the vast majority of cases, depending on how severe it is. Now, narcissism's on a continuum, mild to severe.
So it's a spectrum.
It's absolutely a spectrum. So with a mildly narcissistic parent, what you'll see is a child who, especially as they keep getting older, almost feels like they have to step in and be the parent, like they have to figure stuff out.
Sure.
They need to make sure some of the trains are running on time. They may have to help with younger siblings. They have to listen to that parent's problems. The parent is forever an adolescent. As they go into adolescence, the parent almost wants to hang out and be their friend, that kind of thing. That's on the milder end. At the more severe end of narcissism, we could be talking about frank child abuse. Narcissism and abusive behavior, abusing children are not surprisingly correlated. And so you may see children who are actually in conditions of dangerousness and harm and isolation and all of that. Now, most kids, most narcissistic people are in the middle. And so most kids who had a narcissistic parent, it's in the middle. No one in the world will look at this person and say, we have to call the authorities.
Yeah.
This was often a parent who might have even looked devoted to the world or at moments to the world or been very successful. So in those cases, these are children who are often trauma bonded.
Yeah.
They will then say, even when they're an adult, will say, oh my gosh, I'm being so unreasonable when my parent is concerned. They'll blame themselves even when they're an adult, 50, 60 years old. So it is that our need to attach to our parents is something that persists throughout our lives. Some people disengage, some people go lower contact, some people give up, and some people keep getting harmed by that parent until one of them dies.
Wow. And so for the other parent, how do you explain that to the child?
So we talk about co-parenting.
Yeah.
Okay. You okay?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. Don't ever apologize for emotion. I know it's a tough topic, but
I'm literally going through it right now. Okay. I was co-parenting. I've been separated, going through a divorce for 3 years. Now there's a restraining order because the abuse escalated so much. And so in a way I feel, protected by the courts, but and it's just a really difficult situation, and I struggle to know how to navigate it. I know leaving was the right thing, not subjecting the kids to that. But I struggle to how to have those conversations with my very young kids.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, because that's really the question. In a way, we almost need to stop calling it co-parenting. Somebody so wisely said it's parallel parenting.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Co-parenting, there's plenty of people who get divorced and there's no narcissism involved. I'd say the vast majority of divorces don't have narcissism involved. If people grow apart, things happen.
Yeah.
And those people actually are able to work collaboratively in the best interest of their child. Co-parenting is the word there. Parallel parenting is when you're having to do it and there's someone else doing it alongside you, but you are not. This is not collaborative.
Yeah.
So most people actually have to parallel parent with somebody who has these narcissistic personality features, have to keep doing it. They have to keep seeing this person. Here's the challenge, okay? And I think it's almost an impossible demand we put on people who are parallel parenting with a parent who has narcissistic features or personality or behavior. You have to create a space of safety, routine, predictability, protection. However, the one person on the planet who cannot say a negative thing about that other parent is the parent who's being harmed. Cannot. Because the child doesn't have the apparatus to hear that. Once the child starts hearing your dad, your mom, your other parent is a bad person, they're mean, they don't want you to spend time with me, the child now is officially confused. But
that's in my experience, at least, the narcissist is the one saying horrific things to the little kids.
Yes, they are. That's my point. They're not protecting the child.
It's wild to me.
It's consistent. It's every time. So the very things I'm saying
Yeah.
are exactly what the narcissistic person doesn't do.
Yeah.
But when people are in these circumstances, for a variety of reasons, they're like, I want my kid to know the score. I wish someone told me who this guy was or this gal was in the beginning. No, the child still faces the burden
Yeah.
of potentially having to attach to that other parent. If the protective parent, as Dr. Christine Cocciola, the safer parent, the not narcissistic parent, call it what you will,
Yeah.
start saying things about that other parent that the child has a schema for. Now the child is thinking, I'm in trouble, the world is dangerous.
Yeah.
And then what if then that other parent does do something nice for the child? The child now feels disloyal. The child even feels disloyal when they're being given information
Yeah.
about their harmful parent that they're not ready to hold on to. And that's
Yeah.
the burden, that when a child is given information, this is a mistake a lot of narcissistic parents and even other parents who aren't narcissistic
Yeah.
will make. They'll share personal problems with young children. Your daddy, he spends a lot of time with that other lady because now he's left her. No child in the world
Yeah.
can handle hearing this.
Yeah.
And then there's the fear, and this is a real fear, and it's a fear that sometimes comes true, that the narcissistic parent will fill the kid's head with enough stuff
Oh, yeah.
that the children will turn away from the parents. And I can't sugarcoat that, Laura. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it works. Now, if the healthier parent stays steady, stays on the track, empathy, availability, they need support. For a parent to do this, they need a lot of support, whether it's therapy, support groups, friends who get it. At some point, we'll see a turnaround in many, but not all cases. Are there some cases where the child gets swallowed up by the abyss all the way into adulthood? Yes. And so I can't say that we have ever come up with the perfect solution to that. And then if a person says, well, to hell with it, now I'm going to tell this adult child of mine everything that their parent did. Well, I'm like, now it's too late. Now you're playing into their narrative about you. Like there was nothing you
Wow.
could do. People will say, well, I am giving up so much for my child. I've given up money. I've given up everything. I've given up career. My child should know that. No, they shouldn't. They can't handle it. Again, remember those adolescents? They're still kids. This brain of theirs, jiggly jello, can't stay up solid.
Yeah.
So we think teenagers look so grown up these days.
Yeah.
In all their ways, especially with tech, they know more than us. They're
Yeah.
not. They're not adults. And I think that sometimes people miss that. So
Yeah.
it's this almost impossible razor's edge that we ask the healthier parent to walk on, which is
Yeah.
don't do any of those dirty tricks.
Yeah.
But now these terrible things are being said to your kid, but you can't really defend them. So one of the tricks I recommend to people is what I call the drone's eye view. And by that, I mean, you don't say, Dad shouldn't have said that about me. Well, Dad says things he shouldn't say. Dad is lying.
Okay.
You say things like, it's so hard for you to hear this, and I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Grown-ups are tricky. In fact, you kids, you got it all figured out because you're so honest, but grown-ups are tricky. And sometimes grown-ups say things that they absolutely shouldn't say, and they're really complicated. I want you to know you can always talk to me. I'm always here for you. This is your safe space. By doing that, by making it about grown-ups, the child does not get scared that if I come to my other parent with this is confusing me, that they're going to watch their other parent get slammed, because then they feel like they're caught in like a spy drama. Like,
Sure.
ooh, I brought the information and now I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
But if they can sort of feel like, she's just talking about grown-ups, she's not talking about my other parent, that at some level the child now feels, because what that matters tactically for the narcissistically abused parent, as it were, they now have some information that whether they take that to their attorney, whether they take that to their therapist, whether they take that to family court, whether they even, the narcissistic person's never going to admit to it. You could take it there, but it's pointless, right? But you want the child to feel they've got one safe space they can go to without feeling that other parent is going to get dismantled. Here's where it gets really interesting. YouTube and TikTok and all these places, by the time a kid is 14, 15, 16, they're starting to notice patterns with their more narcissistically behaving parent, and they start looking it up. And I've worked with many parents from, you know, consulting with them from when their kids were little all the way to teenage and even to emerging adulthood. And they'll say, okay, Dr. Ramani, here's the tricky bit. They're now bringing videos to me. And they're saying, Mom, I just watched this video. I think this could be Dad. And I said, don't take the bait. Don't gaslight them. All you can do is sort of smile and say, that's an interesting one. Like, so how did it feel to watch that video? Is it helping you to have information like this,
Yeah.
right? So you're not saying, amen, girl. Like, you're not saying that. You're saying,
Sure.
talk to me about how this video makes you like, well, is this the truth? And say, listen, I'm not an expert in this, but
Sure.
it sounds like there's some patterns here that made you uncomfortable. You know, what could be helpful? Do you want to talk it out? But what you don't want to do is say, boom, that's
Yeah.
it, mic drop. I told you. It's so easy because, again, not that the kid's testing you, but they want to feel that there's a safe place to take something without having to face the indictment of that parent from the one place they can't handle it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Their friend could turn around and say, your dad is the biggest jerk I've ever met. That's very different than the other parent saying.
Wow.
That's a very long answer to your question.
No, that's super interesting. Yeah, because and very, very helpful. Like, I've always thought you never say a bad word about the other parent to your children, right? But when my kids were going to their dads 2 times a week, my 6-year-old is not conversational, but my 4-year-old would come back and say, why don't you let daddy in the house? Let daddy in the house. Let daddy live here. Your boyfriend is horrible. You know, just, and it was so obviously just, you know, he's feeding her what to say. I want daddy in the house. Bring daddy back in the house. But even the way she would say it was so scripted, you know? And I just kind of go, oh, did he say that? And I said, oh, did somebody tell you to say that? And she goes, daddy, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, you know, and then we sort of just move on, you know, but so you just kind of, how do I answer that?
So what you do, and again, to build on what I said, the other thing you don't want to ever feel you have to do is paint that harmful parent as a hero. Don't overcorrect. Say, daddy's always got your back. No, what you don't want to do is get in the mud, but you don't have to paint them as a hero. Hell no. Another way to say it is like, I hear that you miss daddy. That's, you know, this situation must hurt your heart sometimes. I am so sorry. Don't even get in the mud on the whole daddy in the house, I hate the boyfriend. Like, just let her feel heard. Yes. Right?
Yes.
And then honestly, she's going to want to go play her toys.
Totally.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Very, very helpful. So then there's different types of narcissism. What, covert? How many?
I think what's challenging with narcissism is it's not tidy, right?
Yeah.
It's a collection of patterns. And to be narcissistic, you got to kind of do all the things. Like, just because a person has low empathy, that doesn't make them narcissistic. Just because a person's entitled, that doesn't make them narcissistic. Just because a person cheats on you, that doesn't make them narcissistic. It's a lot of things happening at the same time.
Because I've I've made an Insta story and then I've looked back at my own picture and gone, cool. And then I go, oh, am I a narcissist?
So posting a selfie or a video doesn't make someone narcissistic. Otherwise, I'm in real trouble, which I'm sure I know many people on the internet. Well, Dr. Ramani must be narcissistic since she posts videos. I'm like, listen, folks, if I could send this stuff to you telepathically, I'd prefer that. But it's the in the world we're in, sharing of one's life, putting up a selfie, it does not a narcissistic person make. If somebody's on a vacation and they're having a beautiful time in a cafe and they want to put that picture out, that means they just went on a vacation and they want to share their experience.
Totally.
Now, if that person turns around and is manipulative and invalidating and gaslighting and betrays you and has very little empathy. Now we're having a different conversation. Okay? But the problem in the world of the internet is you have a lot of non-experts who have said, oh, I found a big grown-up word and I'm going to talk about it. It's so subtle. It's so nuanced. And like all personality's tricky. It's on a continuum. It's shaped by our past experiences. For many narcissistic people, all this stuff they do, it's very protective,
Yeah.
right? The idea for a narcissistic person to have their ego dinged, to have the sense of their specialness sort of cracked, their ego is very fragile. They have a lot of shame. They have a lot of insecurity.
Yeah.
And that's intolerable to them. We all feel vulnerable, but healthy people can manage that vulnerability through a variety of ways. They don't have that. So they use this sort of suit of armor called their grandiose defenses, the entitlement, the contempt for other people. It's sort of this superiority, right? So you kind of feel bad for them. But the problem is we have felt bad for them, and that's why we kept putting up with more and more and more and more and more abuse in the relationship.
Yeah, because they weren't hugged enough.
They weren't. Yes. Well, they're not. They're not a rescue dog, and even a rescue dog can bite. So
Whoa.
it's a
Bars.
you know what I'm saying. So that's the challenges. I have worked with many narcissistic clients over the years in therapy, and I have not only empathy, but I really adored these clients, but I could see the limitations. It's like, this person is just not going to pull. We may be able to regulate them a little bit more, make them a little bit more.
Rewire the
we
brain
are not
there?
getting them to the point where they're going to have a deep, consistent, unselfish, consistently empathic relationship. Like, it's like buying a lemon of a car. Like, this is going to be limited. And some people might say, okay, if some of those rough edges were cut off, I might be able to make this work. But in some cases, the more severe the narcissism, the less you can bring it to a place where it's manageable. Does that make sense?
It does. Is it a progressive disorder?
No, it's not. So personality, again, all personality develops over those first 25 years. And it's shaped, again, it's temperament, shaped by environment, shaped by ongoing relationships with peers.
Yeah.
And then we sort of do what works. Think of personality as the straight linear path. So we do things that are consistent with our personality. The introverted person, given a choice, is going to stay home on a Saturday night, right? The extroverted person, given a choice, is going to be out every night of the week. The agreeable person, if given a choice, is going to listen to another person's problems, even though they have to get back to work. It's the path of least resistance. For us to break out of those patterns, for the agreeable person to say, you know what, I'm so sorry you're going through this, but half an hour into call saying, why don't we talk tomorrow? I've got to get back to the office. That's hard for the agreeable person, but they can learn to do it. It's the same for a narcissistic person. The easiest thing for them is to sort of be a one-person wrecking crew, to just go through and take what they want and do what they want and say what they want without regard for the other person, right? Whoa. The question becomes, can we teach them? Well, what we know is that because it's such a rigid personality style, it's not easy to break them out because they're protecting against this cauldron of insecurity that they can't get in touch with. You see what I'm saying? It's a sad story as a therapist.
But
I get it.
I see it though, because I still go every week to my 12 steps women's support groups, and I hear the stories and I see the change. I see that change is possible.
Change is very possible if a person is willing to be self-reflective, has humility, has some form of flexibility, is learning to regulate. A lot of it is staying present, staying in the moment. It's work though. You know this from 12-step.
It is
sobriety
work,
is daily work. And I've got to be frank with you. Some people have even suggested, could 12-step be a meaningful intervention for narcissistic people? A daily check-in on humility.
Absolutely, right?
Potentially. Some people have floated it out there. What's hard about 12-step is that it's largely peer-led, right? So it could devolve into chaos very soon. But, in 12-step, the concept of the dry drunk, you've heard that, right?
Oh, yeah.
The dry drunk, think about it.
Yes.
It's someone who's basically narcissistic.
Yes.
Because they've got all the narcissistic stuff. They're just not drinking anymore.
Yeah, they're not medicating
Bingo. So
irritable discontent nature of the addict or narcissist.
But that irritable, constant, it's like I always say that the narcissistic person's like a coiled serpent. There is a tension. Like, we got to walk around that snake just the right way or it's going to go, boom, right? That's what it is. So like, maybe if we don't make any noise, maybe if we go 10 miles out of our way on this hike, we will not disturb that coiled snake. Wow. The coiled snake is the issue. And you not complimenting how they emptied the dishwasher could be enough to make the snake strike, right? And then the way the snake strikes is a way that, again, at least the snake is just being a snake, right? But the narcissistic person is often going for the jugular. They are going to hurt someone else, right? And so it's almost like making you small so they can be big. So I have tremendous compassion for the struggle, if you will.
Yeah.
But what I don't have compassion for, and this is the tricky part of narcissism, the narcissistic person has a capacity to maintain two faces. So they can go into the world and be charming and charismatic, successful, smart, fun to be with, the life of the party, pick up the check for everybody, even a mentor. I mean, people have said like, whoa, I worked with this person. And we do see that as sometimes like places where they feel really filled, like their hockey league, sometimes it's the workplace, sometimes it's their extramarital affair, or whatever it is, that other place, they're behaving one way. And this is why I always call it the dinner party paradigm. You're at dinner with a dinner party and they're holding court and telling stories and everyone's laughing and even looking at you like, gosh, you guys are such a great couple. Like he's so fun and you guys are so amazing together. And even the partner's thinking, maybe, you know what, maybe this is like, maybe I'm being ridiculous thinking relationships can be more than this, right? And then you get in the car at the end of the evening, you're almost kind of relaxed thinking like, okay, we're cool. And the minute the door starts and the car moving, it's like, why? Why did you say that? Why did you have to bring up that time? I did get fired that one time. You had to say fire, didn't you? And like, seriously, why didn't you just like take off your clothes in front of that woman's husband the way you were, and you're like, what is happening? You're like, where is the guy from dinner? That boom. You don't tend to see that as much in other, for example, a person living with addiction might have gotten loaded at the party and then you screamed when you took the keys away. You're like, okay, I know what's coming.
Sure,
a person who has depression might have been very, very depleted at the party and depleted in the car. You knew what you were getting. It's the fact, then you start thinking, well, maybe there's something wrong with me. They were so lovely with the people at the party. Everybody who works with them likes them. My family likes them. The people at the Little League like them. I'm the only one who really thinks this is an icky person. It's got to be me because they can't all be wrong.
Wow. So interesting. So, okay. Yeah. It's just like, I'm just like flashing back to all of these times. And the gaslighting, what's up with that?
So gaslighting it's considered a form of emotional abuse. It's considered a form of emotional control, and it is ugly. Anybody can gaslight. Narcissistic people do it the most. So gaslighting is, and a lot of people, just like most people don't understand what narcissism is, most people don't understand what gaslighting is. Okay. So what gaslighting is a lot of people confuse gaslighting with lying, or a difference of experience or opinion. So it'd be like you might say to someone, I never said that. And you'll say, stop gaslighting me. I'm like, they are not gaslighting you. Not yet. Give it a minute.
Okay.
So the first step of gaslighting is there's usually some element of trust in the relationship. That's why family members can gaslight you, close friends, and certainly partners. Even professionals could gaslight you, like a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer who knows something you don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There is some element of trust, either in their expertise or who they are in your life. And you want to remain connected in them or to them, or you're reliant on them. So that's sort of the first step. It's harder for a stranger to gaslight you. They can, but they don't know you.
Sure. That makes sense.
The next step is that there is a denial of your experience, your memory, your perception, your knowledge. So that's where you hear the things like, you're remembering that wrong. That never happened.
Yeah.
You're making that up. Like, I don't know. You can't be cold. It's 100 degrees in here. It's that. You can't be hungry. We just ate. It's a denial of experience, perception, memory. Like, nobody likes that pizza, that kind of thing. The next piece is really what firms it up as gaslighting.
Okay.
Then they turn around and tell you there's something wrong with you. I never said that. And you know what?
God.
There is something wrong with your memory. I didn't do that. And you know what? I am. Your paranoia is making me absolutely insane. You know, what's interesting is in this relationship, you treat me so badly. So not only is there painting you out as crazy, there's also painting you out as a perpetrator.
Yes.
You're the problem. You're the bad one.
Oof.
You don't believe in me. You don't see how much I do for us. You don't see how committed I am. You're the bad one.
Yes.
Even though they've just done something terrible.
Yes.
They forget all the terribleness. You're the bad one. But Laura, this doesn't happen once. It's every damn day in these relationships, right?
Yeah.
One time gaslighting. And if you don't know what it is, I was recently gaslighted just in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what it was. And so I sent it, I called a friend and I said, let me read you this. And she said, ooh. And she said, I said, I'm angry because in a way, I don't like when someone gaslights me. I almost feel like, I'm being conned by a con, right? Like I should know better. But I can't help someone gaslighting me. I just got mad. But most people getting gaslighted don't get mad. They get confused.
Oh my God, the confusion.
And they blame themselves like, maybe I'm not committed. Maybe I'm not nice. Maybe I am a little paranoid since the babies came, that kind of thing.
Oh, yes.
You see?
Yes.
So that's what gaslighting is. That's why it's so insidious, because it's designed to maintain that power differential. And now the narcissistic person has a total hold on the reality in the relationship. You're the bad one. You're the broken one. You're the demanding one. You're the selfish one. You're the one who doesn't care. You're the one who is mean to them. And all of their bad stuff gets forgotten because now you're focused on being better. I'm not bad. I'm kind. I'm an empathic person. You keep focusing on being better and they keep getting away with it.
Wow.
That's gaslighting.
I found beautiful definition. I found that in my relationship, it wasn't every day. And that was the head fuck. It was right because there was good. It was like, we were two artists. I was a comedian, musician. We were making stuff together. It was so much fun. We had so much fun together, you know? And I kept focusing on that, the way we would laugh and just connect artistically. That really drove us. You know, there was just good. We had 2 babies together and we had just loved and adored these kids. And then boom, it would hit, you know, it would hit. And it was so bad. The gaslighting, the lying, and then the name calling. And so I got to the point where every time he would betray me or lie to me, I just stopped going to him because I realized it was not a safe space to say, hey, this behavior really hurts me. Or, you know, it just wasn't safe because when I would confront him about a betrayal or something, I was then called a bitch and you're prude and you don't get it and you're, you know, and then he would disappear for 2 days, you know, or ignore me. The stonewalling was the worst. Oh my God.
Right. Ignoring
like you
someone
just didn't exist.
A lot of people have said to me, I'd rather be screamed at than face the silent treatment.
Oh
because like
God.
someone's screaming at me, I can engage in that. I can make sense of it. And in a way, you're almost more realistically seeing the person.
Yes.
Because so many people have abandonment wounds too, that when someone goes silent, it really pings those wounds. It's a very, to me, in many ways, the silent treatment is a far more powerful tactic than than yelling. But you bring up an important point here, and it's probably one of the key elements of understanding this whole trauma-bonded narcissistic relationship issue, is the inconsistency. Yeah. One thing, all the pieces of BS that in relationship books teach us, and because relationship books are only written for 2 healthy people in a relationship. I'm like, if you're all so damn healthy, I don't even know why you need a book, but you do you, okay? But that's what they're written for. They're written on that basis. So it's show gratitude, focus on the good stuff. Well, the problem is focusing on the good stuff in a narcissistic relationship can be the kiss of death because it sets you up for even more self-blame and distortion because the bad stuff is so unhealthy for you. It's the gaslighting, it's the invalidation, it's the you're a bad person, it's the manipulation, it's the betrayal, it's all of it, right? Yeah. That when the good stuff happens and you're like, well, I'm going to be positive and focus on we had a good weekend. I hate to be the angel of death here, but I'm a big believer on When somebody, I'm not even the angel of death here. I'll go to somebody who's an absolute, amazing saint, is Dr. Maya Angelou, who said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Those are the words. Like when somebody shows you this, I hate to tell you this, it's a bit like a house with a hole in the roof. This is a great house on a sunny day. But I'm telling you, when it rains, this house, and it snows, this house is going to suck. Wow. It's the same thing. But here's how the trauma bond works. Because healthy human beings, want to attach to other human beings, right? And be in relationship and be close and love and connect. We are almost programmed to ignore or to minimize the bad stuff. That's something left over from childhood, right? The child ignores the screaming part of the parent. It's almost like that's just a bad parent, or I made them scream, or whatever justification, so they can maintain the idealized version of the parent. Well, in relationships, it's like a slot machine, right? You're waiting for that jackpot. So you keep playing the machine, but you don't walk away because you still think you can win. And you justify and you rationalize and you blame yourself and you try to be everything this person wants. And you try to learn to read their mind. And you take, what I always say is, you take on the shame burden of this relationship. That's what you do. And so it's like, think of every relationship as a bag of shame. You're like, oh, I'll carry your shame too, no problem. So that's what we do in these relationships. We take all their crap as well and we carry it around. That's the only way to stay attached. The only way a narcissistic relationship works is if they get to stay perfect and you're the bad one. That's how it works. And so anything you do to show them that they're not perfect, well, then they're going to gaslight you again. But as long as you're the broken one, you're the bad one, you're the problem one, you're the not committed one, this can work. And that's the nature of the trauma bond, is that it's not every day. It might be you have a good weekend. It might be you have a good week. It might be you have a nice vacation. It might be you have nice sex. Whatever it is, it's something that you have a good time with the kids. You have a good day at a theme park. That's enough. And then over time, those goalposts move to, it's no longer about good sex or a fun weekend away. It's, they didn't yell at me today. It was a good day.
Wow. Thinking back, that makes a lot of sense. Thinking back to my relationship, it felt very conditional. Like the times where we were laughing and having fun or like it was because work was going well. And so
they were well supplied.
Oh my
they
gosh,
were regulated.
Well supplied. And in our case, we worked together. So I felt immense pressure to get more successful viral videos, make a certain amount of money. I was so terrified if I did not perform to the level, I would get punished.
You would?
I was punished. I remember I was in a diaper from having a baby, and I'm fucking like writing my book and making sure that I never took a break because I didn't want the negative energy and the punishment and the silent treatment and all of that subtle shit to come in. So I would just do everything to keep it all well. And it's funny because the sick part of me is like, well, I'm so grateful for him because maybe I wouldn't have been as successful had he not pushed me that way. You know what I'm saying? But it's sick.
See, but
it's sick.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
The sick part is not what you did. The sick part is what the other person did. I don't like when survivors say, what I did was sick. I did all this work. I bought their narrative. You were trying to survive. Yeah. You were a new mother. You wanted to keep your family intact. Yeah. This is a story of thousands of people, millions of people, right? Yeah. What's the sick part in that? The sick part is what was done to you. The sick part was the sense of, the only way this works is if I keep proving, if I keep getting their approval, if I keep showing them. Like we hoop jump in these relationships. It's always, if I'm going to tell them I know this person, or I'm going to get this many views, or I'm going to make this much money, or I'm going to get this promotion, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. We are constantly caught. And that's when the narcissistic person is won. When we get caught into that transactional dance. It's like they're a king and we keep putting flowers at their feet. Yes,
yes. And then the times where I would just say like, hey, I want to break. I want to focus on being a mom. Successful people don't take breaks.
That's right.
Successful people don't.
That's a gaslight.
You will be irrelevant. Look at your Google Trends. Look at these and try and like equate my like worth as a human to my trends. And I was like, thank God I had a mom who loved me enough to where I knew that I was inherently worthy regardless of how fucking relevant I was. You know what I'm saying? But it does rub off on you
It
after
does.
a decade of that, you know?
It absolutely does. And it was the only way to stay attached. Like in a way, it's just sort of, what we forget is that in healthy relationships, who we are is enough. Right?
Yes.
Whether there's dishes in the sink, whether there's likes on the video, is that it's sort of like, if you're enjoying this, do it. But I love you. That's not the dynamic of a narcissistic relationship. It's very transactional. It's very, and this whole kind of like coachy, you could be successful. Success is people always work. That whole gaslighted, bright-sided, toxic positivity nonsense that fills the damn internet is such narcissistic crap.
Wow.
Because it really, really does. It creates this sick culture of I always have to perform. I always have to do. And that is playing right into narcissistic people's hands.
Because they have this hole in the soul and they need to get their supply from external shit.
The way think of a building, okay?
Okay.
An old building like in Europe. And we see this when we go on a trip, right? Like you see the scaffold. You're like, oh, I wanted to see the building, but there's a scaffold. Why is that scaffold there? It's on the outside of the building. It's to keep the facade from falling. The facade is very fragile. Okay. So it needs this external support. The version of that with a narcissistic person is, and this is why a lot of narcissistic people are like, they're obsessive in some ways about work. In fact, this is one of the things I'm always like, I work all the time. But I realize for me, very much is a trauma response. I've been told my whole life, you're only as good as your grades, your performance, your book, your publications, you're this, you're that, people please, people please, people please. Yeah. Like that's my whole thing. Yeah. And I always have to stay aware of that. But what the narcissistic person is about is almost like they judge people on that. So that's how we get into the
value,
dance.
Though you're serving through your work. Now, when you get into the results of like, oh, how well did my podcast do, or how, but that's when we have to
toxic.
Watch that, right?
I agree. And so,
sorry to interrupt.
But that idea of narcissistic people look to other people to set goals. So they're like, yeah, I'm going to start this new podcast. And they're looking around the room like, what does everyone think about that? They're always shifting in some ways their goals and even their self-esteem based on what the world is saying. Oh, that's so cool, or that's going well. It's all about the external for them. Yeah. So they project that onto other people.
Whoa. Incredible. That's really interesting. Yeah. I think about why I got into this business in the first place. And it was because I was a clown ever since I was little. I was just always goofy, silly, fun. I was always making my friends laugh. That was just like my role. And it was awesome. And it was fun. And it was what I was naturally good at. And so I was like, okay, how can I make a living doing that? And that's why I got on the internet on the first place, to make people laugh. Right. And then I meet him and we do it together. And then it just became this thing about it. It wasn't really about making people laugh then. It was how much money can you make, or how many views or whatever. Anyway, okay. So, and now my ex, and all of this is so public, by the way, like in my situation, that's why I feel okay talking about it, because it's fucking out there. So I might as well tell my story. You know what I mean? I was so scared for so many years to say anything. And now that it's all out there, I figure like I can't be the only one going through it. A few more questions. I really want to get into smear campaigns. Talk about that, because there's one right now happening. And girl,
I got to tell you, a lot of people have said the smear campaign, which is I would file it under post-separation abuse. The whole sort of like cluster of post-separation abuse. Post-separation abuse is something, so let's talk about that first, and we'll talk about the smear campaign. Something that's been written about in the literature, domestic violence literature and relational literature, for about 10 years now. And the concept of post-separation abuse is the tactics, the behaviors, and the fear and menace that are created in the wake of a relationship ending even if the narcissistic person ended the relationship. This isn't just necessarily because the harmed partner leaves. It could just be because the relationship ended. Because what has happened, the narcissistic person has lost control. And what they've lost control of is their sense of power, domination, and above all else, their public image and the narrative. This is why this concept of the smear campaign, which is really, I always say, when narcissistic people break up, I think that while the other person may be crying, the first thing they do is go through their phone and figure out how they can get to everyone first, right? So whether this is done by them making phone calls, texts, conversations, social media, group texts, you name it. And sometimes for public people, it happens in a public way.
Oh, yeah.
They will dismantle, they will sell a plausible narrative. Right? Because what is one thing that destroys so many people in narcissistic relationships?
There's two sides to every story.
I'm like, one side of the story is really, really messed up. And again, they're very asymmetric relationships. It's two people in a relationship, but one's playing chess and one's playing checkers, right? So one person's being very strategic and the other one's just boop, 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 moving their little checkers across the board. They're different games. The narcissistic person is in a tactics, strategy, control, and domination game. And the other person's just sort of like, well, this is sort of fun and I hope I get all my checkers to the other side of the board. Not so strategic. So the problem becomes that this whole two sides to every story, all of that, when the smear campaign starts, and the way narcissistic people do smear campaigns, it's convincing. They often play the victim. That tends to be almost the crux of many smear campaigns. Not only the narcissistic person playing the victim, but they'll draw threads of the relationship out. They'll send selected parts of a text message or something like that. And they will turn that into, can you see what I had to put up with? Can you believe this? Oh, it's my birthday and I'm alone, even though I was supposed to see the kids on my birthday. It's that.
Yeah.
So the smear campaign, and also here's where the smear campaign gets tricky. It's actually more heartbreaking for some people than the end of the relationship, which is how easily people you thought loved you can be converted. Like people actually start believing what that person is saying about you. They don't do the decent thing and saying, hey, can we talk? Because they just called me and said no. Instead, you see them getting cold and distant. And then you have the problem of the enablers who are often very self-serving. The enablers may not necessarily be narcissistic, but they might have liked the idea of that other person. That other person might have paid for things for them, whoever's doing the smear campaign. So the smear campaign also is a way for the narcissistic person to sort of call in all their favors. Hey, you don't believe me? Like, I paid for your kid to do this. Or remember when I took us all on vacation? And so that gets distorted too. But they sell a plausible narrative and they play on the tropes of the world. And that's how it works. But the reason it works is they get in fast and early. Like I said, while the other person is at home crying and like trying to maybe protect kids or put their life back together, the narcissistic person, like I said, basically going to their phone and social media and everywhere else and getting their story out first.
That's wild.
That's what it is. But the other things that are part of post-separation abuse are stalking, legal abuse, tech abuse. That can be everything from putting cameras in places, putting trackers in cars. You may have forgotten that you still have a shared account. They may still have find your device on it, or even malware on computers and phones, hacking into accounts.
Yeah, he hacked into my account and deleted my Facebook page with 14 million followers on it that I worked for over a decade on. Then he went hand by hand and deleted the last 4.5 videos, YouTube videos, the last 4.5 years of YouTube videos, all of that work that I poured into for the last 4.5 years. And what's really sad, it's like, I'm supporting your kids. Why don't you want me to earn money?
Laura, let's think about that. That is a rational, what you're saying is rational.
Yeah.
I am earning money. This is good for your kids. That is, for somebody to see it that way, they would have to have self-awareness, awareness of someone else, which comprises empathy, putting the children first, have addressed their own vulnerability, fragility, insecurity, and shame, behaved in a way that you would think ahead and say, this may not be good for my kids, if they were ever aware, because as much as I am mad at her,
Yeah.
Ultimately, I have to protect the kids. Remember, this whole idea of, oh, okay, yeah, they're going through divorce, but he's such a good dad. She's such a good mom. She's such a good parent. No, no, and no. If a person can harm the other parent, de facto, they're a bad parent.
Wow.
You harm the parent, you harm the child. People really have to understand, like, no, the marriage is separate from the kids. No, or the relationship's separate from the kids. No, it's not. The child is seeing their attachment figure be harmed. That hurts the child. I don't care if your feelings are hurt. Once you had kids, you had to transcend that. And you had to say, I am so mad at this person, but I have kids and my first obligation is to my kids. That's the job, folks. Okay. And you're like, well, that's not authentic. The hell it's not authentic. You had kids. Don't talk to me about authenticity. Talk to me about protecting your kids. That's where we talk about. And so that sense of, I'm going to do all these things. Why would you do this? The why always comes back to they lost control of the narrative. They lost control. They feel shame, so they're going to hurt someone. That's all it is. So all these rational things of like, why wouldn't you want to protect your kids?
Yeah.
That's just not the conversation.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm finally learning that now after this instance, because the post-separation abuse is getting worse. You know, from 3 years ago, it really just started where he threatened me. He was on drugs. And so I said, we need to separate. I don't feel safe. The next morning, the very next morning, I wake up to all these texts and calls. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? I said, what's going on? Oh, and then I look online, there's a video, I separated from my wife, just publicizing every little personal detail of our life. And so the smear campaign really began then. And I was the villain for walking away from a man who was just depressed. That was the story that he wanted out there.
Yeah,
I
that's the
tried,
narrative.
tried to end my life and she wasn't there. Like, that's the story. And I just had to sit there and kind of get attacked. And, you learn to not care so much what people think, and you just know you're doing your best to do the right thing. But I find I tried, and then, he was arrested for domestic assault, spent the night in jail. And even then we had a psychologist that you would be outraged. He begged me, please don't get a restraining order. Please, please, please just take a meeting with a psychologist and, I'll do whatever. And I did the session, and the psychologist said, yeah, he's fine. You want to get along, like just get along, And I said, but I'm scared. And he goes, yeah, but if you can avoid, getting a restraining order and do it peacefully, you should. You should co-parent peacefully and do the mediation.
Should you? That's great. That should you. Every
and
psychologist who
listened.
says, yeah, well, again, that's authority gaslighting you. Remember what I said? It does not just somebody you're close to. That idea of not even building in. But this is why so many people have died of domestic violence, because of the bad advice that has floated around for so long, and not listening to the advocates who say, this is dangerous. I can't tell you how many times I've said in a situation, folks, we're dealing with a dangerous situation, and I see eyes rolling, and I'm like, oh my God, how many people have to die before, when we say it's dangerous, it's dangerous. That's the, that's the crux of this.
Yeah.
And we're, again, first of all, just again, for a little, even in stories that have not been as severe as yours, a standard narcissistic ploy, the "Are you okay?" and the long, crazy texts you wake up to.
Yeah.
That's not an unusual thing in toxic relationships. I'm not saying everyone who does it is narcissistic, but it's deeply unhealthy, because it's somebody who's so dysregulated that they have to say all their crazy stuff, knowing you're going to wake up to it, right? So a regulated person might even write that in their journal, say, can we talk? And then you talk at a reasonable time.
Yeah.
But having someone wake up to, again, are you okay is a gaslight maneuver, by the way. Narcissistic people do this all the time. Are you okay? Are you okay? Why would I not be okay? Like, I'm fine. But when somebody keeps asking you that, you think you're crazy.
Whoa. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why I always say to people, what's up? How's it going? Talk to me. Like, in fact, we shouldn't even say, are you good? No, how are you? Open-ended question. Let them answer it. But don't send it repeatedly, and Unless you're saying good morning to someone,
Yeah.
don't send them a text while they're sleeping.
Right. Yeah. I know it was jarring to
It's
wake
very
up to
jarring
that, 'cause I'm
because now what that
how does
person has
everyone
done-
know what's going on?
So what they've done is they've effectively ruined your day. Do you
Right.
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what they want to do. And, and then that takes us to other issues
Mm-hmm.
beyond post-separation abuse, which are things like coercive control.
Oh yeah.
Now,
define
coercive
that.
control is where we really level up. It's a relationship where there's often not physical abuse. There can be, but there's often not.
Yeah.
Where a person is harmed in the relationship through a pattern of fear, menace, and control. A person is afraid to step out of line
Yes.
because they're afraid of what could happen. Will I be punished financially? Will I be put out on the street? Will this person leave me? Will they take the kids away from me in court? Will they hurt me? Will they hurt people I care about? All of these threats have been quietly been made. They'll even make it in a way like, you better not leave me. Ooh, I know where that person lives. I'm messing with you.
No, literally the threats.
The
Oh
threats,
my
but the threats will
God.
sometimes be stepped back. So you can't go anywhere with those threats, right? If you say to the cops, like, he was threatening
He
to...
made a joke about this.
He made a joke, gaslight. So coercive control is all of that, but it can look like financial abuse. And remember, financial abuse is, in its most typical form, it's somebody taking away a person's ability to earn money. So sometimes it's taking away the credit cards, not giving a person access to bank accounts, but it also can be you've so messed with a person's life, they can't keep working, right? Or you encourage someone to leave work, stop working because be with the kids. And initially it might even be sold as a good thing. Or the person gets in there and controls the finances of what someone else's, of the harmed person is making. But we also see threatened harm to others in the environment, pets, dependent adults, like elderly adults or something like that, children. We see again, a lot of gaslighting, the big thing in coercive control though is the isolation. It's keeping the person from other voices. So close friends are cut off, and they're not just cut off, it's also, your friend hit on me, or your friend said this to me. And if they catch you at a point where you even had a tiny seed of suspicion about that person, you may distance. Or even if you don't believe them, you're embarrassed to bring that person around, your partner who's
Sure.
saying all this stuff. So you see what I'm saying? It's insidious.
Yeah.
In a coercive control situation, though, to the world, they're not seeing someone who's got necessarily bruises on them or anything like that. But it's somebody who's trapped, but everyone thinks like, well, the door is open, you could leave, but you really can't. The consequences of leaving, post-separation abuse, or worse, are always hanging out there, or the partner may even threaten to harm themselves. They'll say, if you go, then I'm going to. I'm either going to harm someone else, or I'm going to harm myself, or I'm going to end my life, or I'm going to set the house on fire, or whatever it is.
They make it romantic. I love you so much.
I can't
I'll
live
kill
without you.
Yes.
Yep. Listen, I mean, there have even been stories. I remember one woman we had on a former podcast of mine. Her husband flew a plane into their house. People do stuff.
Do you find, is it more likely that a male or female is a narcissist or not?
So it depends on the way the narcissism presents, right?
Okay.
When we're talking about grandiose and malignant narcissism, we see those qualities appearing more in men. And a lot of it is because it's how it's socialized. It's what we permit. We foster that sense of competitiveness in men. It's also, we discourage men to talk about emotion. All of that can combine, and we push success for men, and the way the whole the man thing is going these days with the bloggers and everything. I'm like, we're in a dark period of this. I mean, with the podcasters and all that other stuff.
Podcasters president.
There's a different when we talk about the narcissistic vulnerability, the more victimized, sullen, sad, depressed, fragile, dysregulated. That's distributed equally between men and women.
Why am I attracted to that?
The vulnerable narcissistic traits?
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes people within the vulnerable narcissistic person, they see someone who could be saved, rescued, misunderstood by the world.
Yeah.
There is a vulnerability. Again, there's a vulnerable narcissist. There's a vulnerability.
Yeah.
They are... Again, empathic people will say, here I am again. And part of it is, it's not so much that the empathic person is out there looking for like, oh, well, let me look for someone who's victimized and sullen. No, it's that the relationship starts out fine, right? But then they can't unstick themselves. They can't get out because they feel so much pity and guilt at leaving someone who's just kind of like, I mean, there's not a lot of there.
So what are the red flags, the subtle red flags to look for so we don't find ourselves getting...
I approach that question really carefully, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because there's always a danger with that question of still the survivor in the relationship blaming themselves. Well, they told me the red flags and I still didn't see it. It's that subtle, right? And a person can't spend the first year of their relationship constantly like walking around something.
Yeah.
You know, if all our lives are as being red flag detectors, that's a really tough way to live. It's a real hypervigilance from the beginning. Mm-hmm. The problem with narcissistic patterns is they're a slow burn, especially when we're talking about more grandiose patterns. They can really show up as larger than life and exciting and fun and fairy tale and romantic and all the things. So that definitely is something where most people are completely sort of, you know, blocked off from seeing what the toxic patterns almost feel like I'm being ungrateful. This person's doing so much fun stuff and I'm complaining because they got grumpy about a parking spot. Like that makes me a jerk. So that happens there. With malignant narcissistic partners.
What is malignant narcissism?
Malignant is the most severe, coercive, manipulative, exploitative form of narcissism. It feels much more dangerous. It feels much more menacing. You're like, how does somebody get into that relationship? It's not all the fairy tale. Well, in those relationships, malignant narcissistic people will often take advantage of a power differential. They're much older than the person. They have much more money than the person. They have more connections than that person. There's a gap there that they exploit. And this person may have vulnerabilities, maybe even secondary to trauma, youth, lack of resource. Could be someone trying to break into a job, a career, an industry, any of those things. Malignant narcissistic people take advantage of that. So early on, the person in the relationship is, I can't believe a person like this wants to spend time with me. When we get to the more vulnerable narcissistic presentation, well, this is where we see kind of like this sort of failure to launch. You feel bad for them. It feels like nothing's going their way. They're sad. They're depressed. Well, I can't be mad at someone who's depressed. They just had a tough life. You really get drawn into their trauma discourse. Nothing's ever been fair. And you hold space and empathy for.
And they also have this romantic, sensitive side.
Yes, they do.
Right?
Very much so. Very much so.
So it's like,
and
it's
a lot of
all...
these styles overlap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the grandiose person could be doing great until stuff goes wrong.
Right.
They're not making as much money.
Right.
The job's not going well. Now that vulnerable stuff shows up, but you still kind of feel bad for them because you love them. Because one thing I will not buy is they'll say, oh, they're narcissistic. I never loved them. I said, yes, you did. Don't cancel your history. You loved them.
Yes.
They harmed you. And your love for them is what allowed it to be even more harmful. That's the piece. Don't deny that you connected to something in them. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means you're a loving person. And so I think that there's that piece too, that we're like, well, if they're such a bad person and you love them, maybe you're a codependent. You're not a codependent. You met someone and there were things you connected on, and the most empathic, compassionate parts of you did sometimes make excuses, but those good days were in there and those felt good. So that's the confusion. That's the challenge. Yeah.
So do you think, wow, okay. It's just so there's no cure, obviously. So what do narcissistic people do to find love? What about them?
It's easier for them. They find love quite easily. This is a statement also on our world. The superficial way that people look for partners, appearance, credentials, on paper, what do they do? What's their job title? How much do they make? Where are they from? We often use superficial characteristics. Are they attractive? Do they hold a certain form of social status? I'm not saying everyone's on the make, but I'm saying those things can be compelling, right?
Sure.
And so narcissistic people are better at that stuff. They're better at all the stuff that's superficial. They're going to find. But see, what they're calling love and a healthy person calls love is quite different. For a narcissistic person, love is a person who meets their needs, who exists for them, who doesn't ever call them out, who it's basically being the parent to a spoiled child
Okay.
and continuing to spoil them. That's what they want.
What do we do when we've finally walked away from the narcissistic relationship and we're trying to find love again? I find I'm terrified.
Mm-hmm.
I'm riddled with trust issues. I do become overly sensitive sometimes. Like last night, I made a nice dinner and he didn't really eat it and walked away and got distracted. And I found myself deeply saddened by that. And it's like, why? That's not that big of a deal.
But you're gaslighting yourself when you say that's not that big of a deal.
Okay.
So healing and survivorship from narcissistic relationships is multiple steps, right? The first step is very much about safety and stabilization. It's about feeling safe in yourself.
Yeah.
It's about feeling safe with people.
Yeah.
It's about feeling safe. It's about feeling confident you can ground yourself, that you can give yourself permission to just take a moment. That's the sort of the first step.
Sure.
The second part is then getting it, like then feeling comfortable enough to learn about it. And if people are still self-gaslighting and they're putting themselves down a lot, you should catch that. And it may also mean that it's taking more time because trust got breached in a pretty fundamental way in this relationship. And it's not just going to come back.
And I just assume people are lying now to me.
That's
because
understandable.
I was lied to.
But that's protective.
Yeah. And
That's
so I just
protective.
don't necessarily believe the person anymore. And I hate that.
I know you hate that. And the process is to be aware of it, but also to continue to build relationships with healthy, safe, validating people where you say, oh, the promise was kept. They followed through. I do have examples of this. And it's really then saying, this person did that, but other people don't. And it takes you then in the higher stages of healing from this. It's something we call discernment. It's the ability, again, it's actually trauma turns us, and relational trauma, and even narcissistic relationship turns us into a black and white world. Everyone's bad or everyone's good, right? Everyone's not bad and everyone's not good, right? Discernment means walking through the gray. It means I can slow down. I can stay in my body. I can understand that other people are important. I can connect. I can trust myself. I can step back for a minute if I feel like I need to regulate. I can even ask myself that, what was it that happened for me when I made food for someone and they weren't interested in it? How did your body might have experienced that as rejection?
Yes.
Your body might have experienced that as abandonment. Your body might have experienced that as contempt. Now, he may have simply said he was distracted by work, or the person who didn't eat it or wasn't hungry, right? And that's true. But our body holds it. So people are like, I don't even think about them anymore. I'm like, sweetie, I don't care if you think about them. Do you still feel them? That's what I want to know. And we hold it here. So then that person steps away and you feel it in your body, maybe in your chest, your guts.
Yes.
You feel it.
Yes.
And then that feeling translates into emotion. And that emotion takes you back. And all of a sudden, someone's stepping away from a plate of food. Your body is registering it as the losses you had in a prior relationship. And then, so that's what I'm saying is that this is ongoing work. And this is why I always tell people I always say, and 1 year may not even be enough, but I say 1 year after a narcissistic relationship ends, no new intimate relationships. Friendships, yes.
Yeah.
That kind, but no new intimate relationships because things are still too raw. Your body is still healing. Your nervous system is starting to learn again that the world has safety in it because a person who's been harmed, especially in a severe narcissistic relationship, is walking through a dangerous world, right? There has to be this sort of this transition, and then the ability to hold the story of the relationship, not as I was dumb, I was foolish, I couldn't see it, but rather I met a person, I see the reasons I fell in love with them, I was harmed by this person. I see how my past history was associated with that, and then have the feeling. Go through the grief, go through the loss. The loss isn't necessarily of the relationship. The loss is of having a family that you grow old with. The loss is having a partner you grow old with, having your kids grow up like that. The loss of innocence, the loss of trust. There's so much to be grieved because as that happens, you can start holding a story in yourself that isn't, I'm the bad Laura who can't love. Rather, it's this happened and it was sad and it was painful and I did my best and I don't blame myself for it, and I was not responsible for someone else harming me. If somebody could, if that was their compunction, they could have gotten up and left, but they choose to stay and harm me. That's on them. Nobody is responsible for their own abuse.
Wow. I need to tell myself that more. Wow. So yeah, any other tips on healing from narcissistic abuse?
Taking it slow.
Okay.
Not everyone can afford therapy. Not everyone can access therapy. Not everyone can find a therapist that understands narcissistic relationships. If you can seek out therapy in an ideal world, you'll get the therapist who gets it. At a minimum, you'll get a therapist who's trauma-informed. Actually, not even a minimum. Get someone who's trauma-informed, who understands how these wounds stay in our body for a minute. Or get someone who understands relational violence. Even if there was no physical violence, they sometimes understand some of the themes. Those become crucial. Having people, trusted people. I'm not saying you have to go out and have 20 friends. 1, 2, 3 people. Remember, these relationships often pull us out of our social world. The outcomes are better for those people who held on to those friends or have friends they can turn to. To go into community. Now, for some people, that could be a support group. We even have, like, for example, we have a healing program, for survivors of narcissistic relationships. I'm so proud of it. We're in our 3rd year. Thousands of people have gone through it. Well, you're certainly welcome to join. We will give you the details. And we have workshops every month and question and answer sessions, but the real beauty of it is the community platform because we moderate it. It's not social media. So if we moderate it, we have 2 amazing women who moderate it, and they're on it like almost like 18 hours a day, 15 times a day to make sure it's safe. And we give people the opportunity to say this thing didn't feel safe, like a place, so people can't come in and do harmful things. Totally. But what the people learn there is not only are they not alone, but they can be supported, and over time they can be supporters. They transition from the one who is hurt to the one who is helping, and that's a big transition in this process. I also tell people, be very selective about who you share your story with. And that means that not everyone can hear this. There are a lot of bright-siders out there, people who say, oh, well, look at the bright side, you're out of it now. I'm like, yeah, and then my whole soul has been hijacked. Or like, oh, don't use that word narcissistic. Sometimes people have different experiences, or who sort of soften it, or say, oh, it'll be fine. I bet one day you guys will just be getting along just fine. Like nonsense like that you're not ready to hear right now. And some people are just almost like, la, 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 I can't hear this. You need the people, even if they can't, because nobody can fix this. It's the people who can be present with this. Again, recently had this experience. I was talking about a difficult experience with someone who's just, she's built of titanium. Like I have couple of friends like that, one in particular, and she's able to hear what I share. She never tries to fix it. She never has a narrative for me. She just listens. And every time I leave a conversation with her, I feel less crazy than when I went in. And that's the win. You just need those places of safety, of connection. And then, and again, you need to take this slow. There is no 5-step process to healing. There's no 30 days to healing from narcissistic abuse. This can take a lifetime. And I tell folks, the win to me is when the narcissistic person is decentered from your narrative. They're now something that happened, but they're not the center. The center is the stuff that's meaningful, purposeful, the people you love and care for, like kids or other close people, the stuff in your life that matters, your friendships, that's what becomes centered. And this is something that happened. And you're able to create a coherent, emotional, not just like, here's the story, like you've told it 100 times, with emotion. Like, and I'm sad because I once believed in marriage and I don't believe in it anymore. For a person will say that's a big loss for me. I'm not saying I don't believe in relationships, but or I've worked with survivors who'll say I'll never live with a partner again. That idea of my own physical, and I'm telling you, people are 15 years out. One woman, I'm thinking of one woman I talked to just in passing once, and she had said, went through it terribly, horrible, the whole thing, kids, the whole 9 yards, post-separation abuse. She meets a man, she falls in love. Lovely, gentle, sweet, kind man.
Okay.
And he wants to get married, and marriage was meaningful to him. And
Yeah.
they did it in a way that none of their assets, nothing was like they're separate people, but they have this. But she said, I'm not ever going to live with you. So they live in two separate places. They happen to live in a big city, so it's more public transport kind of thing.
Yeah.
She's like, we're a couple stops away. And she's like, 3 to 4 nights we're separate. The other nights we're together.
Dream.
She said, never. And she said, unless it gets to the point one of us is older, like there's a health issue.
Yes.
But she said, now, no. And the partner, instead of saying, what's wrong with you? She said, if he had said that, then the relationship would have been done. Do you see what I'm saying? It's these standards you hold for yourself. Healing is about giving permission to those standards, because most survivors, that all got wiped out. You don't know what your values are. You don't know what your standards are. Healing is giving permission to say, no, I don't think I ever want to share my space again. It's too important to me. And then if somebody says, well, then no way, then they're not your person. Someone says, like, what if everyone thinks this is a whack idea? Then I said, then maybe you may not want to relent on that, or whatever high, because this person is 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week with the partner in the same house.
Yeah.
But I said, if that's to be found, but otherwise you've now given up on something that really mattered to you. And now you feel unsafe, or you might even feel like I let myself down, which you didn't. You were probably just trying to do what that other person asked. It's true. I'm not saying any of this is easy.
Yeah.
And over time, you'll find that you feel more connected to the world, to the people in the world. Your relationship to trust changes forever, though. You will always be a little vigilant.
Yeah.
And because the other alternative is you trust too quickly. And if you
Right.
try to heal too quickly, you trust too quickly. And that's when the bad actors can get in. So I would say take it slow. And if the discernment means it takes you longer to trust, so what? You'll weed out the suckers.
I love that. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're brilliant. Wow. Will you come back?
Yes. Yeah,
We're
definitely.
neighbors, so you
Thank
have no
We will.
excuse.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me. So you can find me on my website, drramani.com. And there's all of our programs, our healing program, the Dr. Ramani Network, which is a weekly, basically almost like an interactive podcast where you learn more about this. We also have a YouTube channel where we have thousands and thousands of videos on narcissism and healing and from narcissistic relationships. I have 3 books on the topic. The most recent, It's Not You. I mean, all of them. One's called Should I Stay or Should I Go? One's called Don't You Know Who I Am? One's called It's Not You. They all take on the issue in different ways.
Yeah.
If you're a therapist who wants more training, we have information on that at the website too. You can find me on all social media at Dr. Ramani.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
being here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Woo.